Just to let you know, this episode deals with themes of grief and loss. Welcome to Filmability. My name's Joel Fisher and I'm the author of Filmability, A History of Disability in Cinema, that you can find on Amazon and Kindle and paperback. This week I'll be talking about the fundamentals of caring. Not the actual concept itself, but the 2016 comedy Road Trip, starring Paul Rudd, Craig Roberts and Selena Gomez. The Fundamentals of Caring is written and directed by Rob Burnett, adapted from Jonathan Levison's novel entitled The Revised Fundamentals of Caring. Rob Burnett is primarily known as a comedy writer, having created the early 2000s comedy show Ed, starring Tom Cavanagh, and having hundreds of credits as a writer on The Late Show with David Letterman. Prior to the Fundamentals of Caring, Rob Burnett also co-wrote and directed a movie called We Made This Movie. As usual, I'm going to be going through the movie and highlighting moments that may or may not feature an accurate representation of disability. So if you haven't already seen the Fundamentals of Caring, I suggest you do so before finishing the podcast. And because it was distributed by Netflix, that's where you can find the movie. So without further ado, let's get on with talking about the fundamentals of caring. Okay, so the movie starts out with showing a boy laughing. We don't know who he is, but we will get to know who he is in relation to the story. Next thing goes to a large church-like building where a man walks up the stairs, and inside there's a class where people are being taught how to be caregivers. They're told to care, but not too much. And if you can't take care of yourself, then how do you expect to take care of other people? They're also told an acronym, ALOHA, which relates to how they can deal with disabled people that they're caring for. It says, ALOHA stands for Ask, Listen, Observe, Hear, and Ask Again. The next thing we see Ben, played by Paul Rudd. He goes to a house of a woman called Elsa, played by Jennifer L., who tells him that she's had difficulty finding a caregiver for her son Trevor, played by Craig Roberts. Ben tells her that Trevor would be his first job as a caregiver. Trevor comes in with his wheelchair and starts getting noises akin to somebody with non-verbal cerebral palsy. It's brash and loud introduction to the character. I think the audience will get an idea that he's playing it up, but it's trying to subvert the idea of what you'd expect a disabled person to be like. Because Elsa tells him off and he starts to talk as he normally would do. It's clear that he's cynical about Ben and about how the world sees him. He also uses the R word and his mother tells him off again. It sort of gives the impression that him and Ben are not getting off on the right foot, and that's mainly because of Trevor's trepidation for being looked after, and probably at this age he feels like a child. And the next scene, Ben goes to see his wife, Janet, played by Julia Denton. She asks him if he's agreed to sign the divorce papers, and he denies getting any. He's clearly having trouble moving on, and his wife just wants them to get on with their lives and end their relationship. She tells him that it's been 2 years and he still hasn't done anything. Back at the house, Elsa tells Ben that Trevor has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Ben makes sort of unsure noises, suggesting he doesn't know what that is, and Elsa just tells him to Google it. She then goes through a list of things he needs to remember to look after Trevor. She's going through it like she's Trevor's personal assistant rather than his mother, but I can understand that looking after somebody with certain needs, it would perhaps start to feel like a job. She goes out the room and reminds Trevor that it's Ben's first day and not to make him cry. Ben asks if Trevor wants anything, and Trevor replies he'd like a blowjob from Katy Perry. But then Trevor shows Ben a map of the world's tourist attractions in the country, and it's sort of a hobby for him to sort of look at all the places that he can't go to, but they're all rubbish, so why would he want to go there anyway? Then Trevor tells him that he needs to go to the bathroom, and a montage proceeds where Ben and Trevor are doing things, everyday kind of things, but Trevor is being as awkward as possible, including pretending to choke and pretending that he's lost control of his wheelchair, to which Ben ignores him and eats an apple. At the end of the day, Trevor is then in bed and tells Ben that he would really want to take a pee standing up, to which Ben replies that yeah, it is pretty awesome. I mean, personally, I haven't thought about this. I don't think if you're disabled that you do think about things you can't do, but you know, I'm not him. Ben goes back to his apartment where he's met by a man who has a court order, and he wants him to sign the divorce papers. Ben gets back into his car and drives away quickly to avoid him. Then back at Trevor's watching a movie, and Ben suggests that they go on a road trip, telling him that he can do everything like everybody else. This scene kind of comes across like it's a non-disabled person who sees a disabled person's life and thinks that they can do better. I mean, Ben has barely known Trevor. He doesn't really know much about him. So he's kind of made an assumption that Ben is to get out and do things like other people. I mean, this is where the film is going, but still, there's the term, like the term white saviour, that when films show an able saviour, it could be just as bad, because you're assuming that the disabled person's life is terrible just because they're disabled. Ben then hands Trevor an envelope, and then Trevor goes and puts it away without reading it, and you can see there's loads of other envelopes. He says they're from his father and that he resents him for leaving his mother, and he blames himself for that reason. Next scene, Elsa tells Ben that she likes that him and Trevor are getting on so well, but she knows that he won't be around forever, and that she knows about Ben's son, and that she doesn't want him to make promises that he can't keep. This annoys Ben because he felt like he confided in Trevor, but Trevor just immediately told some very personal things which are very close to Ben's heart, and clearly he's still grieving over. So he gets angry with Trevor, and he tells Trevor that he's wasting his time sitting around and doing nothing. And Trevor reminds him that he needs to move on with his own life as well. They're both kind of stuck because Trevor's life is so routine, but Ben is stuck in a moment that he couldn't control, and he wishes he could move past it. Later, Elsa is sitting in the kitchen, and she says that she knows about what Ben suggested about a road trip to Trevor, and she reminds him about making promises he can't keep. Ben assures her that he'll be okay and that it'll be good for Trevor, going as far as showing her a map, and she reluctantly agrees by saying, but also says that they need to plan it carefully. Trevor's a little bit anxious about going out of his comfort zone. It's a big deal for him. But Ben says they're going to call the Make-A-Wish Foundation and get Katy Perry to meet them in a hotel room. I don't think Trevor believes that, but there's always the incentive. So they get in the car, and Trevor's mum, even though she's warming to the idea of them going away, she's still making sure that Ben has everything in hand, and they drive off. And later on, they're in a bathroom. It must be American truck stop or something like that. And Ben picks up Trevor and tries to hold him on his feet, and wants him to pee standing up. Trevor is a little reluctant, but he has no other choice, and they struggle a little. It's a funny moment. Back in the car, Ben wants him to try a snack. Trevor doesn't want to, but Ben insists and waves it in his face, wanting him to try something new. At a petrol station, Ben and Trevor see a woman standing there and she's smoking. This would be Dot, played by Selena Gomez. She compliments Trevor on his sneakers and he just replies, "Mall." Back in the car, Ben makes fun of him for not saying much because he was nervous talking to a girl. And Trevor defends himself. He gets a bit, he gets defensive. And to show that he's willing to do things, he tries the snack that Ben wanted him to try earlier. But then he starts to choke. And because of what Ben did earlier, Ben thinks that he's joking. And this goes on for a little bit until Ben realises that Trevor's serious. He stops the car, and just as he's about to pull Trevor out of the car, Trevor stops choking and starts laughing at Ben, to which Ben, quite rightly, reacts angrily. This whole thing, the sort of level that Trevor is at, is that he's got this disability and he knows all the facts about it. It seems he knows about his mortality, and he's I'm not sure, accepted it maybe, but he's got a gallows humour, sense of humour. This may not be for everybody, but this is how he's dealing with things. But I think also, if you're going to repeatedly make fun of your own disability and make every big moment about that, then there's a sort of danger that people won't see you as anything else other than disabled. It adds a bit of humour and it's sort of subversive. So, I think it just depends on the audience, really. So they get to the first attraction on the map, and it's the world's largest bovine. Bovine being cow. I mean, I'm not over-explaining things to people, but that's what it means. Really big cow. They get to the desk, and the guy behind it says that it's on the second floor, and because they hadn't put any ramps in or anything like that, he can't help them. This is just the thing that the man behind the desk sees as, well, it's not my problem. So Ben gets angry. He threatens to get the press involved unless he sorts something out, and also Trevor gets offended when the man suggests that Ben is his father. So then we cut to a hurried and chaotic scene where Ben and a few men that the man behind the desk has put together are struggling to get Trevor's wheelchair up the stairs. They go up to see the cow and are pretty underwhelmed. And then there's another quick cut back to the same kind of scene as they go back down the stairs. Yeah, this is an everyday thing that the stories I could tell about going to places and just flat out being told I can't go places, or that they've not thought about what I need to do. It just comes across as they don't really want me to be there. Next scene, back in the car, Trevor says he wants to see his dad. He says that he lied earlier when he said he was back in England and that he knows where he lives. It's a scene where, much like the grieving process that Ben is going through, Trevor is also grieving in a way, not only because of his disability, which he hides the pain of due to his sense of humour, but also the fact that he feels alone and abandoned because of his father. Later on in a restaurant in Idaho, they see Dot standing outside and facing away from them. Ben suggests that they go give her a ride, and he thinks that she may be a runaway. Trevor doesn't want to, and he suggests it's because he's worried about their parents. Nothing to do with the fact that he's talking to a girl. But Ben convinces him otherwise, but only if Trevor is going to ask her himself. Trevor then gets up the courage and leaves, but not before giving Ben the finger as he goes out, or as much as he can do because of the limitations in using his hands. Ben watches from the window as Trevor goes up to her, but just before he gets to her, he turns around and goes back in. She hasn't noticed that he's there, so, he hasn't lost anything, he hasn't made a fool of himself just yet. So Ben then goes out and asks Dot himself, and after the initial conversation where she thinks he might be a pervert and insisting that she's 21 so that he won't, be preying on these small children, they all go inside. And she recognises Trevor and starts to ask a lot of inappropriate questions, like what's wrong with him, does it hurt, and if his penis works. And I should be saying this because, and if I've said this before, I'm sorry, but I'll say it again because it needs to be said. Don't ask a disabled person what's wrong with them, because it implies that being disabled is wrong and that there's something wrong with that. I know it's ingrained in society and it's a way that non-disabled people have thought about approaching the subject, but let's do it differently. Let's just, ask why they're a wheelchair, why they're disabled, or maybe don't ask at all. Get to know the person in the chair, the person who is disabled, rather than just going straight for the thing that you want to know. It's insulting, and every time somebody says, "What's wrong with you?" I die inside. After the restaurant, they go to the car and Dot tells them about how her mother died and her dad isn't reliable. She says he doesn't even know where she is, but she did leave him a note. Ben notices that there's something wrong with the car and it starts beeping. He wants to stop the car because, he's really overly cautious about getting everything right. But Dot says that he's a pussy for doing so, and because Trevor wants to impress her, he agrees as well, so they don't do anything about it. Later on, in a motel room, Trevor's telling Dot about their plan to see the country's worst tourist traps, and she's not impressed. She's that kind of a character. She's aloof, and it's going to take more to break through to her. Ben's looking out the window and he's worried because he's seen the car before and he thinks that it's his wife, that having sent somebody to give him the court order and get him out of her life. Then the next bit, they go to their beds and Trevor has a breathing mask on and Ben falls asleep as he's thinking about his son. In the morning, Ben comes in and tells Trevor that he took the car to the garage and he says that there's nothing wrong with it and it was just a fuse. It looks like he was just worrying about nothing. Ben then helps Trevor out of bed and a montage begins showing Trevor getting ready, but the expression on his face tells the audience that he's just done the same thing over and over again. In the car, Ben calls his wife and gets angry at her, thinking that she got somebody to follow them. Then as they go on their way, it's clear that Dot and Trevor are bonding, especially when they both stick one arm out of the car window to feel the breeze as it goes along. It's a nice moment. Trevor then gets Dot to guess a number and he was thinking of between 1 and 3,500, and she picks the right number by going for the highest one. It's Trevor's attempt at trying to flirt. In the next scene, they stop the car to help a pregnant woman who's broken down. Her name's Peaches and she's played by Megan Ferguson. Ben goes back to the car and he suggests that they take her to the nearest bus stop, but Trevor insists that they take her all the way to Nebraska, where she said she was going. And he says it because he wants to impress Dot. Back in the car, Peaches tells them about her heroic boyfriend who was a soldier. She's clearly very proud, but she's also very nervous about meeting his parents. Back in another motel room, Ben then suggests that they go out for dinner. But then Trevor says that Peaches is feeling tired and suggests that perhaps Ben is feeling tired too, and it's clear that he's thinking of asking Dot out on the date. Dot arrives and They tell her what they were thinking, and she laughs because she immediately sees through it and knows that it's just because Trevor wants to go on a date with her. So she makes him ask her properly. And then she agrees and tells him to pick her up in a few minutes. And with that, she leaves. Trevor is a little bit nervous now because, it's all feeling a bit real for him and everything. And suddenly, out of the blue, Ben starts to panic. He's looking around and he's getting worked up as he realised he might have left Trevor's medicine somewhere else. And this causes Trevor to panic, as it would do, and then Ben reveals the bag with the medication and that he was just winding him up. So all those times that Trevor pretended to choke, it's finally come back to bite him. And personally speaking, it works both ways. You don't fuss about my disability as a joke to somebody else. So don't do that to me, please. Don't make them think that something's gone wrong when it hasn't, because personally, if I'm without the things that I need, it's really not great. And I'm very disappointed in the person who's done something. I mean, I do tend to take care of everything that I need, but if I need to rely on somebody else and they've let me down, then it's not a great feeling. Anyway, in the next scene, Trevor's outside Dot's room, and after a bit of back and forth between them, they go off to a diner that's across the road. Ben's watching from his motel room window, and Peaches arrives a bit later. She says she's feeling a bit better, and as they sit down, they both watch Dot and Trevor across the road. Peach says it's sweet and encourages Ben to touch her pregnant belly. She says that she knows about his son and asks him what it's like to be a parent. He says that you can try to protect your kids from the world, but you can't control everything. Some things still go wrong. So maybe there's a little indication that Ben is coming to terms more with what happened with his son. The next day they all arrive at a car dealership. Ben says they're looking for Bob Richardson, who's played by Frederick Weller, and that he's Trevor's dad. The receptionist goes to the office in the back, and after a few seconds she comes back and tells them to go inside. They meet Trevor's dad, and he's the typical car salesman looking type. He's got this shirt on and he looks slimy. He doesn't look like a reliable person. He's a bit cagey. He wonders why Trevor's there and what he can do for them. Trevor tells him about the letters that he was sent, and he hasn't read any of them. But then his dad says that he thought that it wasn't a good idea to write to him himself, so his mother has been pretending to send him the letters from his dad. He then gets some money out of his pocket, and as an empty gesture, he gives it to Trevor, saying he wants him to have the money that he just pulled out of nowhere. And understandably, Trevor leaves in a hurry and is quickly followed by the others. Trevor is devastated. And I think, this is a thing, this is not specific to disabled people, although there are many parents who can't handle having a disabled child. I'm lucky enough to have both father and mother who have stuck with me and are still here. But there are many who don't, and the stigma of disability and the unknown and things that they think that they can't handle force them to leave. It's a real shame. Outside, Trevor's crying, and Ben apologises because he thinks he's pushed Trevor to see his dad. Trevor accuses Ben of taking the job because he thought that he would be a substitute for the son that Ben had lost. And Ben says he didn't even know that Trevor was going to be a teenager when he went for the job. And it's just that Trevor's trying to push him away, but he knows that they can't. So when they get back in the car, Dot sees the situation, and because of her character, she knocks their heads together, figuratively speaking, and tells them to just get on with it, and they have to work together, so they should get on. And then they arrive at the next destination, which is called the biggest hole in the world. And as they're looking out, they're kind of impressed. Dot is impressed, which is interesting because Dot doesn't seem to be impressed by anything, and Trevor's pretty impressed by it as well. And then they go down to the bottom of the hole, and that car appears that Ben saw earlier, and he thinks, right, now is the time to confront whoever's there. And so he goes to see the driver, and a man rolls down the window, and Ben says that he knows who he is, and that he mentions his wife and Trevor, but the man denies everything and says that he's following his daughter, who turns out to be Dot. The dad's name is Cash, and he's played by Bobby Cannavales in an uncredited role. He says he's just looking out for her, and he doesn't want to get in the way. Ben understands, and he says that he can follow them if he wants to. Ben then gets a call, and it sounds pretty urgent, and he rushes off thinking that something has happened to Trevor. But when he gets there, it seems that Peaches has gone into labour. Ben panics as he doesn't know what to do, and while he's helping, he starts to think about his own son and how turns out he was hit by a car while they was picking up some groceries in the middle of the road. It's clearly still blames himself for not being able to save him. So that's the mystery of who the little boy was in the opening scene and who he keeps seeing in his mind. It's very sad losing a child, I'd imagine, and something that's very much in Ben's mind because he's bringing a child into the world. And as he delivers the baby, a crowd that has gathered applauds, and then Peaches and her baby are loaded into an ambulance, and Trevor, Ben and Dot go back to the car, and Dot sees her dad. She goes over to him and they talk, and Trevor asks Ben about Dot's dad, and Ben assures him that he thinks he's okay. And then Trevor gets a bit nervous when Dot comes back because he doesn't want her to think that they were talking about her. She says she's decided to go back with her dad, and despite Trevor being disappointed, he tries to play it off, but unconvincingly. She tells Trevor that he has her number and that she wants him to text her. She leans over his chair and kisses him on the cheek, and then kisses him on the lips. Dot's dad then asks what's wrong with Trevor, just like Dot did, and Ben talks about Trevor's life expectancy and other things that were sort of, it comes across like he'd read the little facts online, but he also talks about Trevor's personality and that he really likes him. Dot then goes back to her dad and says goodbye to Ben. They watch as they get in the car, and then they drive off, and Dot leans out of the car and watches Trevor as they drive away. Trevor looks devastated, but Ben has an idea, and so he gets out of the car and talks to the ambulance drivers about something. Although, if you think about it, the ambulance came to pick up Peaches, so I assumed they'd take her to the hospital. So, why are they still there? Anyway, Ben puts Trevor on a board and some straps, the kind of thing that you'd find EMTs using, and he secures Trevor to the board and stands him upright and tells him that he's going to take the biggest piss in the world into the biggest hole in the world. And so he does what he needs to do, and Trevor does just that. Although this is probably where I should burst your bubble, because despite this being a warm-hearted and uplifting way to bookend Ben and Trevor's relationship, there are issues with what is being done. Firstly, people with Duchenne muscular dystrophy have weak, fragile and fatigued muscles. Lifting a person with this condition could cause shoulder pain, strain on already weak muscles and pressure pain on skin or soft tissue. There's also a risk of dislocation as well, and if it doesn't dislocate, then it could still leave lingering pain. Also, people with Duchenne muscular dystrophy could have respiratory problems as well, and lifting somebody under the shoulders could cause unnecessary pressure to the chest and the rib cage, not to mention the extension of the upper spine and the neck. Also, despite the fact that Ben has strapped Trevor to a board, because of the weakness in his muscles, Trevor would not be able to stand up straight, whether laying on or attempting to stand up straight in the first place. No matter where the straps were, once Trevor was hauled upright, the weight of his body would drag him down into an uncomfortable position. Basically, regardless of the intention, this is not something a professionally qualified carer would do to somebody with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. They go back home and Elsa's overjoyed to see Trevor in one piece. Ben then also goes to see his wife, and it is implied that he will now sign the divorce papers. And Ben is also writing about Trevor, saying that he'll keep in touch with him, and he kept in touch even after he went to another job. And he even visited him for his 21st birthday, where he found him in his bedroom, lying on the floor, and that he'd found peace. And that his new caregiver, a woman in her 60s, was seen sobbing by his bed. But then he also says that Trevor was faking it. Okay, that's it. Fundamentals of Caring, a sort of light, breezy road movie, but I do also have some thoughts. So as I said, The Fundamentals of Caring is a road trip movie. It has a bit of edgy humour in it, but also there are themes of grief and loss that everyone can relate to, and it keeps the audience watching. Ben is dealing with the loss of his son and his marriage. Dot is grieving as well because of the loss of her mother, and in a way Trevor is grieving too. He must be fully aware of his condition or his mortality, and has chosen to make fun of it, perhaps pretending that he sees the funny side, where deep down he wishes for more. The chemistry between Rod and Roberts is good as well, with the former maintaining his status as a likeable everyman. Even Selena Gomez, in which I think this was her biggest role to date at the time, shows promise in her character, and that she's not just the love interest with no personality. However, with the good comes the bad, and like so many other films that are about disabled characters, it seems that The Fundamentals of Caring doesn't want the truth to get in the way of a good story. The film does highlight the struggles of access when travelling, although it doesn't really go into it enough for my liking. On the one hand, we are shown Ben and Trevor having access issues at a tourist attraction. However, we are not shown any issues with motel rooms, diners and other restaurants. There are also the issues surrounding Trevor's disability, which are diluted and waved away in order to maintain a story. Things such as Ben's manhandling of Trevor would never work in real life and may cause serious or permanent injury. However, showing Trevor as a normal teenager with the same needs and wants as any other boy his age is an encouraging representation for other disabled teenagers. The Fundamentals of Caring may paper over the cracks a little and somewhat ignore reality, but it's still a fun road trip movie if you can get on board with Trevor's sense of humour. And up next, I'll be talking a bit more about Duchenne muscular dystrophy and how people deal with it in real life. There are over 30 types of muscular dystrophy, of which Duchenne muscular dystrophy, otherwise known as DMD, is the most common and one of the most severe. DMD is a muscle wasting disorder which is predominantly found in boys, but it can occasionally be found in girls, although with milder symptoms. It is a progressive condition where people with it experience progressive weakening of skeletal muscles, leading to increased difficulty with mobility, motor skills, and eventually heart and breathing functions. Early signs of DMD often appear in boys between the ages of 2 and 5 years old. DMD is caused by a mutation in the DMD gene, which tells the body how to produce dystrophin. And dystrophin is a crucial protein that is found in muscle cells with the job of protecting muscle fibers from damage during normal use. The progressive weakness that people feel with DMD is because the body replaces muscle with fat and scar tissue. Women can be carriers of the mutation in the DMD gene, but a third of those born with it don't have it inherited from either parent. And now, I think I should admit that I was looking for people who, perhaps not famous, but should be known about with DMD, and I didn't think I would be able to find any. However, I have. Nawal Akram is a Qatari comedian, model, athlete and disability rights campaigner. She was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy at the age of 6 and was forcibly removed from education against her will at the age of 10 by the school. She became a wheelchair user at the age of 12 and has since founded Muscular Dystrophy Qatar to raise awareness for the condition, and has been named as one of the BBC's 100 women in 2017. Hridayeshwar Bhati was an Indian student who invented a 6-player variant of chess at the age of 9 with assistance from his father. He earned a patent for his invention in 2012, making him the youngest patent holder in India at the time. For his invention, Bhati received the Carving Care Ability Special Recognition Award and the Sri Balaji Society's Child Innovator Award. He since designed and received patents for 12 and 60-player versions of the game, with the board capable of 100 distinct variations altogether. He was also a recipient of the Rashtriya Bal Puraskar, which is the highest civilian honour for children in India. Besides circular chess, Bhati developed a ramp system, enabling easy access to vehicles for disabled people. In 2014, he was presented a Dr. Batra's Positive Health Award by Mahendra Singh Dhoni. Also Darwin Ramos, who was a Filipino street child and waste picker. He was taken in by an organisation where he was baptised in the Roman Catholic Church and would lead prayers up until the week of his death in 2012. As part of the canonisation process, he was named as a servant of God by the Vatican in 2019. Another the most famous person, or perhaps a person you'd heard about but didn't know much about. Alfredo Ferrari, son of Enzo Ferrari, the founder of Ferrari, worked with his father as an engineer and was widely credited for the 750 Monza racing car, and to a limited extent a 1.5 litre V6, going on to be called the Ferrari Dino engine, that would later see action in Ferrari's early Formula 2 races. Alfredo suggested to his father the development of a 1.5 litre DOHC V6 engine for F2 at the end of 1955. 2 years later, in 1957, to honour his son, Enzo named the Dino series of racing sports cars using the V6 engine after him, and the road cars soon followed. Now in the final part of this segment, I thought it would be silly of me not to talk about carers, considering I'm talking about a film that deals with a relationship between a carer and a disabled person. Every single one of you are needed. Many of you choose it to be your profession, and this goes on to further advocacy and support of disabled people, whether it be through social interactions or emotional care, and every bit of it is appreciated. There are also many carers who do not choose it as their profession, and due to family members or perhaps even close friends becoming disabled or unable to look after themselves due to long-term illness, they find themselves in the role of a carer. Upon doing my research, it seems that there are many factors that affect this, from mental health and physical health to financial problems as well. Many people decide that they have no option but to leave their paid employment in order to care for their loved ones, and often that can feel like a full-time job in itself. Even as people get older, the care that they provide doesn't stop, and as it turns out that there are many people who are well into their 70s and 80s who end up having to care for a partner who has fallen ill or has been diagnosed with a condition such as dementia. All I'm saying is that we understand you, We see you, and as much as you care for us, we care for you also, even if we are sometimes not able to show it. Okay, so on with the trivia. I can tell you that Timothée Chalamet auditioned for the part of Trevor. And also for the petrol heads there, I can tell you that the vehicle that Ben is provided to transport Trevor in is a Mobility Ventures MV1. It is the first and only vehicle designed from the ground up for wheelchair accessibility. It meets or exceeds all ADA guidelines for vehicles straight off the assembly line. It's unclear in the movie how they got this vehicle. It may have been arranged by Ben, but it seems that maybe his efficient mother may have been the one to get a hand in this. Permobil supplied the power wheelchairs. 2 chairs were used and they got damaged in the production, but Permobil UK prepared them. At the time, the chairs were state-of-the-art and very highly specified, although if you are looking for something like that in everyday life, I can tell you that as a wheelchair user, it's not always the best that you're going to get. The one I'm sitting in right now is how I would describe perhaps the last chicken in the shop, but it all depends on what you're willing to put up with, I suppose. I can also say that Selena Gomez and Craig Roberts were featured in the Neighbours franchise, although not together. Roberts was in Neighbours 1 in 2014, and Selena Gomez was in Neighbours 2 in 2016. And a fun fact I can tell you that in the UK and other territories, this franchise was called Bad Neighbours because the long-running Australian soap opera of the same name was just popular in the UK and elsewhere. Prior to the movie, Paul Rudd and Bobby Cannavales had also been in Marvel's Ant-Man. Paul Rudd and Selena Gomez would go on to be in Only Murders in the Building together, a series which Bobby Cannavales would also make an appearance in 2025. And finally, I can tell you that when Ben is talking to Dot's father, he mentions that Trevor's illness affects every 1 in 3,500 males. This is a direct correlation to when Trevor asked people to pick a number between 1 and 3,500. He is essentially quoting the statistics of his illness. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Next week I'll be talking about Day of the Triffids, the 1963 adaptation of John Williams' classic sci-fi novel, where a meteor storm causes the whole world to go blind. If you'd like to contact me, you can do so via Bluesky at bluesky.com/film-ability. You can also email me at film-ability@outlook.com. And if you'd like to make a contribution to the things that I do here, you can find me at Patreon at patreon.com/film-ability. You can also find my book at Amazon on Kindle and paperback called Film Ability, A History of Disability in Cinema. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.